We're Steve and Audra. We're from South Florida, have been married 22 years, and love traveling and adventuring, laughing, and working on low-budget DIY projects together.
Our latest adventure is the purchase of this 2019 Ford Transit high-roof cargo van. We're trying to build out our van as affordably as possible, getting creative with how we use materials within the limited space of the van.
So far, we've shared the installation of our subfloor, bed platform, and max air roof fan.
In this episode, we're sharing about the most daunting, challenging tasks so far. We're building the sleeping area above the bed platform with the goal of maximizing every centimeter of space and ending up with enough room for us to be able to sleep sideways in the van.
But there are no straight lines in a van, so this has been a real test for us. Come along with us as we take a look back at when we started insulating the van and as we start the next step of the journey. Our first delivery for our van has arrived. We're going to be applying this self-adhesive Frost King duct insulation on the surfaces on both sides of our sleeping area. But first, we need to prep the van.
So what you doing?
Taking a lunch break. Sitting down on the job. I've been washing down the walls in here, and I'm kind of surprised at how dirty it all is. So I started here. I can actually feel a film on here. I washed the sides there. Got back to about here and up here and started washing this, and this is how disgustingly dirty it is. You can see the dirt in the bottom just from washing that. And the reason I'm washing it, we're going to put this up instead of rattle trap. We're going to use a little bit of this, and we're going to put it in panels here, since this is where the bed's going to go, and we don't have much room for insulation, so this is only 1/8 of an inch thick. So we're going to put it in here, and then a really thin wood over that, and then put the bed in there. I was a little intimidated by this at first, but I think it's not too bad to work with. And it's super easy to cut. Voila. Here it is with insulation and without.
In order to get the space ready for building out, we needed to remove the protective casing of the factory wiring. Our goal has been to preserve any materials removed from the van in the process of the build. That said, getting the wire conduit off was not easy. I found it near impossible to remove it without breaking a lot of the clips. I really don't want to break these clips, but I might have to get medieval on it here in a second. Bite it off. There were lots of fasteners for the wires that we removed so we could push them closer to the ceiling, out of the way of the finishing pieces. While I was at it, I also removed the interior lights to make room for the ceiling installation that we plan to attack soon. To make the back section, we started by making a template out of cardboard. Templates are pretty useful for a van build where nothing is straight. We cut out the piece to see how it would fit. As always, the first cut was not the last. We had to make several adjustments to the piece before finally getting it to fit properly.
We decided to build an interior window of sorts at the back of the van that would serve several purposes. The first, to cover the ugly upper and side back areas of the van, and also to act as a frame for a screen that'll keep bugs out and our cats in. The wood portion of the design also provides some extra wall space in case we decide we'd like some extra bedside storage in the future. We thought this was a creative and practical way to handle this space of the van.
In the design of the back piece, we notched out spaces for the wires so they wouldn't be damaged by the wood.
One of the reasons we chose this design was that we knew we had a window screen in storage that we could utilize. During our brainstorming session about this space, we decided this would provide a good solution, better than the typical hanging mesh screen door that we've seen other van lifers use, and cheaper since we already had the screen. We determined what we thought would be the best placement, traced the screen, and made our cuts. There it is. After a good bit of sanding, the screen fit like a glove.
By golly, I think she fits.
Nice. We test fitted the piece with the screen in. We plan to use screen clips to hold the screen in place. Voila, our new screen.
We sanded down the face of the wood and gave it a quick paint job. The bottom of the opening also lines up with the mattress, so we'll be able to sit with our feet out on the back ledge and take in the views. Look, 100 sheep.
Yay, our wool arrived.
I thought 100 sheep might weigh more.
Woohoo! Next, we worked on finishing up the insulation in the walls for the sleeping area. You think it'll smell like a barnyard? For the larger cavities of the van, after much consideration and deliberation, we decided to use Havelock wool. We plan to talk more about our reasons for choosing this material in future episodes. Insulation seems to be one of the most controversial topics among van lifers. Sheep. So I meant to cut double this and fold it in half, but I forgot, so now I have to just do two pieces in this one space. We're not sure if it was necessary to do the 2 layers of insulation, but with the 2 layers there's just enough material so it naturally stays in place. Voila. So layer 2. Also, having that extra insulation in the upper areas might be a good buffer for the intense Florida sun that beats down during the day. I learned the hard way, it's better to wear gloves. Not because of the wool, but because of the metal edges. I cut myself and didn't realize it. So, now I'm wearing purple gloves. Filling the cavities can be tricky. We used an arsenal of random tools, such as a snake drain auger, a clothes hanger, and a string to try to push and pull the insulation into these smaller areas.
We knew we wanted to make provisions for running electrical wire in the future should the need arise, for things such as solar, lighting, and power to outlets. It was important to do this now before we cover these areas with building materials. We decided to run some pull strings to make that possible. To run the string, I dove into what is my poor excuse for a fishing tackle box to find a sinker to attach to the string. There is an ideal, unobstructed path here at the back corner of each side of the van to allow for this. I simply dropped the weighted string into the back column and was able to fish it out of the lower light switch plate that comes standard with transit vans. We installed a few more Plusnuts in the factory holes so we could begin experimenting with methods of finishing off the bed area. For more about Plusnuts, check out our last episode. We used scrap pieces of wood to figure out how to build the bed area with the goal of maximizing every centimeter of space. There really is no contest. This was by far the most challenging aspect of the build thus far. So many angles and so few places for bolts proved to be a novice's nightmare. There was lots of testing and experimenting in order to formulate a workable design.
Like he had done previously when building the bed frame, Steve used hanger bolts to mark the wood so he knew exactly where to drill the holes for the Plusnut bolts. We began putting up faceboards along the upper wall area. These will act as a base for attaching cabinets and our final wall finishing material. We debated what thickness to use since it seems advantageous to not add unnecessary weight, but this thicker 3/4 inch wood seemed like a good solution because we already had pieces that we had salvaged, and it's thick enough to provide a deep enough channel for the factory van wires that run from the front to the back of the van. Once we had some of the faseboards in place, we needed to figure out the best way to attach the interior parts of what we'll call the bump outs, for lack of a better term. The Transit has these recessed panel areas that we're going to take advantage of to give us the most width possible for sleeping in between. So we could get the mattress to fit in the recessed areas as far back as possible and have enough head and foot room in the bumped out areas, we had to get creative with framing it out. We couldn't just cut straight pieces to form a framing box. We had to cut and sand each piece to fit perfectly with the curves of the van.
This stage is like working on some super complicated 3D puzzle. What made this the most frustrating was the upper corners as we tried to figure out how to cover the curves of the van without losing valuable space. Maybe this is a no-brainer for a master carpenter, but for us as Tweedledee and Tweedledummer, we were doing mental gymnastics. And by the way, I'm Tweedledummer. The magic of video editing might make this look not as cumbersome and frustrating as it was, but trust me, it was not easy. What you doing?
I'm spraying the adhesive between the foam, around the foam and the insulation to stick it together before we put the Luan up here. The last type of insulation we used was polystyrene foam insulation. We had some leftover insulation from our subfloor, and I discovered that there was just enough space between the ribs of the panels over the bed to accommodate the foam insulation. I was glad to be able to add the extra insulation to provide additional temperature control and sound deadening. For the walls of the recessed areas, we used Luan wood since it's only 1/8 of an inch thick and has a nice smooth finish that we can paint. This is a nice lightweight material, but it does have a tendency to split and splinter when cut. We found that if we cut on the back side, the face side tends to fare better. We used 2x2s at the base of the bump outs to secure the Luan sheets. The awkward positions we get into to measure all of the odd angles. We're going to use the wooden frame pieces to secure the Luan in place at the top and sides. No, it's not the same at all. Do you want to hold this over there for that?
More templates and mental gymnastics here as we tried to figure out the cuts for the last few pieces. No joke, we probably retrimmed or sanded just this one piece about 20 times before we finally got it to fit snugly against the rounded edge of the van recess. Almost. Another 1/8 of an inch.
So we've been sanding down this edge to try to fit this curve. So we're going to see how it does. Oh, it's still just a little bit too much. But then it's good on that side.
Alright, after many scientific calculations, we have determined that pi divided by 3 equals this line being the line of demarcation. We got to be really aggressive in sanding from this point back to this point.
On the top of the
On
surface,
the very
right?
top piece of the board.
Is that what you think, Dr. Ready to see if it fits?
Yep.
Alright, let's go. No truth.
Number 723.
Does it actually fit?
I feel like we still have the same gap on your end.
It's a lot smaller, but I think part of it is that there's a gap here a little bit. This is what it looks like with the final piece in place. How we sanded its curved edge now. Kind of fit that curve of the van. Right now we're working on the side piece for this. We'll fit that in place. It'll finish this difficult chapter of the build.
We used the scribe method to determine the contour of section 27 4B quadrant 83 side piece. Don't worry, we're just making labels up.
When we finally had all the framing pieces cut and sanded to fit, we gave everything a quick coat of paint. We also added some final insulation, more duct insulation on the exposed metal areas, and wool insulation in some of the smaller areas as we began putting the pieces back in.
And then you need me to hold it up? Yep. Okay.
Finally, we screwed all the pieces in place for the final installation.
After all the rigmarole, we think it actually turned out looking quite nice. For the passenger side of the van, we repeated all the steps but didn't have to deal with an electrical line.
You got it? That's pretty good. Nicely done.
Thanks for watching another of our episodes. For all of you who have subscribed to our channel, thank you. If you found this video helpful or have enjoyed following our adventures, please like and subscribe to help us out. Tune in next time to see what's next in our adventure.
What's that on your face, Steve?
Oh, just a little bit of paint splatter.
And how did that happen?
Oh, just trying to put the lid back on the can.
Oops. This is my rewarding project for the moment. Look how thick that paint is. That's lots of layers of paint. The paint roller might actually fit in here now when I take this out.
There's a few years worth of paint.
Might be reason to rinse out the tray between painting.
That's about 7 years in the making.
And after. Ta-da!